Well, I see you're here and you're lucky enough to be here for the meeting of the Brentwood Rotary Club on this Friday, the 13th. Okay, so glad everybody's here. I want you to do one thing for me today, and that is somebody that you haven't seen or talked to in a while is probably across the room from you. So I want you to look across the room, and on three, I want you to say hi, whoever it is. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Hi. All right. Now, y'all all heard that. Meet each other after the meeting and say hi again. All right. Today we have the invocation by Bart King and a four-way test by Tom Carr.
As we go to God in prayer, let's remember Bill Coles, Bill McCarthy, Dan Jordan, Leon Bertain, Bob Bellenfant, and Robert and Dottie Fiddler. Almighty God, you love all your people with a love we'll never fully understand. You care for each child and each nation and know every heart. Give us the desire to spread your word. We so often keep it quiet. Let it begin to burn in us in a way that we can do nothing but tell others of your love and your glory. Almighty God, you're the Father of heaven. You're the God of King David, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and our God too. You reign forever and ever over everything. Bring us peace when we're overwhelmed. We don't know how we can accomplish all the things we need to get done. Light our path and show us the activities and obligations we can't say no to. Help us release the burdens that preoccupy our mind and keep you at bay. Come near. God, please hear the cries of those who feel overwhelmed as they serve you. Many people don't feel your presence right now in their lives. Remind us of your faithfulness. Help us to see a light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes we can barely remember what light looks like or what it feels like to have a simple joy. Help us focus on you even in darkness. God Almighty, you're capable of healing all diseases, parting the sea and raising the dead to life. We worship you and praise you. Give strength to our friends who are sick and in pain. Cradle them now and heal them. Good Father, death is no match for you, nor sickness nor pain. You're mightier than it all, able to abolish all suffering. Further, you can wipe out the strongest army, move mountains, and create the earth out of nothing. Your strength and loving kindness knows no end. Remind us of your power now. We're so quick to run to a friend for help and then feel let down. Be our strength in all situations. Bless this food to our bodies and us to your service. Come into this room. Come into our hearts. Let us feel your presence. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Yes, would you
Please face the colors and say the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now before we test for the things period, things say do first. It is true. Second, there are all forward.
Good afternoon, everyone. We do have a couple of guests, and we do have one visiting Rotarian that also happens to be a guest. And I'm debating who should actually introduce this person, but Richard Hickey is joining us.
Right.
We're very grateful to have him here. He's a visiting Rotarian from Brentwood Morning Club. He is also a guest of Assistant Chief Colvin, but he said he didn't like Assistant Chief Colvin, so he didn't sit with him. So we're glad to have you here. Thank you for being here. And Tim Stoll has a guest that he'd like to introduce.
My guest today is Dane Peachy. His company is Compass Real Estate Advisors. He provides tenant representation services to tenants and buyers in this area. His office is in Cool Springs. Welcome, Dane.
Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Tim, and welcome, Dane. Stan Settles is joining us again as a guest. Welcome to Stan. Stan is a field representative with Senator Haggerty's office. He joined us last week. He is a prospective, and we're glad that he was able to join us again, and look forward to getting your application in process, which it currently is. So thank you for being here, Stan.
And if you're
Um,
going to steeplechase, you'll probably see him there since he's the tallest one going. So
And lastly, Donna has a special guest that she will get an opportunity to introduce, but I wanted to let everybody know that Gracie Napier, Donna's granddaughter, is here, and she will be speaking to us in just a moment. With that, President Crossley, back to you.
all right, good deal. We are going to collect something special for Happy Bucks, and I want Chief to come up and kind of tell us a little bit about it. And Jody and Jim are going to be taking care of business while he talks with us.
Thank you, Ms. Crosley. For those of you who don't know, my name is Richard Hickey, and I'm the Chief of Police in Brentwood. I took over after Jeff Hughes retired. So I'm honored to be here. I'm a member of the Brentwood Morning Club. One of the things that Jim and I have partnered on that we want to do more of from the police department is community engagement. Sometimes when you look around Brentwood, it's hard to find needs because we're all so blessed, but there are needs even in our city. And the glaring one to me has always been this children's home. So we're going to do something this summer we've never done before. We're basically going to host a day camp at the police department for about 15 in the children's home. They'll spend a week with us doing all kinds of activities. Our DARE guys are going to teach them some of their DARE program. They're going to do some defensive tactics with them. We're just going to have a fun week because, as you know, most of these kids unfortunately have not had good interaction with the police usually because of their parents. Nothing that they've done on their own, but they're at the children's home many times because their parents are unable to care for them. And many times, unfortunately, it's somebody wearing a uniform like Jim or I that comes into their home and takes them out of the home. So lots of times they don't have a good interaction with the police, and we want to change that. So we're going to bring them over for the week and have a week of activity with them. And on Friday, we're going to culminate with a cookout and a party where we have a dunking booth. And Jim Colvin doesn't know, but he's going to be in the dunking booth. You're welcome. I've also challenged our city manager to get involved. We may challenge some of our city commissioners or former city commissioners to get involved. And just have a day of fun with the kids. Obviously, this is going to cost us a little money, and we don't have a budget for this, but I'm going to find the budget. So Jody graciously volunteered your Happy Bucks today to go toward this cause. We're also going to feed them lunch. I'm going to try to get my morning club to do the same thing. So that's what the Happy Bucks is going to today. Thank you, guys.
And if you didn't have your Happy Bucks today, you can also go online and donate to the BRCCF as long as you put designated for, you can put designated for police and we'll know what that is. Okay, great. Happy Bucks. Now it's on.
Okay. I think it's awesome, this camp. And I would volunteer to do anything that might be counselor, help the kids, anything like that. But the reason that I was putting my Happy Bucks in today is maybe you have to be from out of state to appreciate driving down Concord on my way here. So beautiful. Top was down, temperature's perfect, the wind and the breeze, the green that's just kind of blown up in the last couple of weeks. It is so gorgeous that it just made me happy.
There
So
you
There
go.
you go.
Home sweet home. Anybody else? We've got several here.
I will put so much in today, but I will double that if I get to name the commissioner we've done.
Yes.
Just happy celebrating another grandchild. 6 years ago today, I had 0. I now have 6. So the 6 was Evie Jane, born a couple months ago. I haven't been here in a while.
Oh, I love it. Jody. Jody, Drew's behind you. I'll do it again. If you don't have money today, you can go online to the BRCCF where it says payments up at the top right of the website at brentwoodrotary.org and just designate the payment for police and we'll know what that means. All right.
So
I
for
know-
my Mother's Day, we spent a couple hours at Deerwood Arboretum, and I just want to say thanks for all of y'all that did that in the late 80s, early 90s. It is, if you haven't been out there, you should really go. It is incredible. It's so beautiful.
It is my favorite place. If I've got a decision to make, I go back there, sit by the river and just contemplate, what should I do?
I'm glad to contribute to the cause. I do want to say I'm glad Gracie Napier is here today. Gracie's going to talk about RILA and about back grade program, but she was also in short-term youth exchange. And that program is amazing. It's high school kids being able to go overseas on an exchange program, either short-term or long-term. We're not doing it this year. No summer program, no school program this year, but next year we will. And so I'd remind all our club members to identify high school candidates who are interested in doing an exchange. Now's the time to identify them. If you've got questions about the program, come see me. Thanks.
Yeah, I talked with Mike Thompson at District and he says they are really going to gear it up and try to get some folks at least short-term, if not further for long-term. So that'd be awesome. Jordan, you had a quick announcement about something on the table. All right, very good. Somebody in the club spoke to Kelly Motley, our speaker last week, and said that they wanted her to get involved in Toastmasters. Or is that person here right now? It was probably Jay Cook. Okay, I will try to get her. She did not know who to get back in touch with. So yeah, I'll try Jay. All right. This next week, we have a board meeting on Wednesday at First Horizon. I think you got a note about that from Drew. For those of you who are on the board, our banquet again is the 23rd of June. We're working on that now. Sherry and Jane are really working hard on that. So we're going to look forward to that. And speaking of Jane, we have a Pancake Day update. So let us know what the deal is. Yeah.
So as everybody knows, we had our first in-person Pancake Day in 2 years. We had somewhere between 500 and 600 attendees, which I think is pretty good for a first year back after 2 off. And it was also not on our normal sort of weekend. So I think that was a good response from the community. We raised after expenses, we ended up with a little more than $5,300. We had 85 Rotarians who volunteered their time to help make the day a success. And among those 85 Rotarians, we ended up with 418 service hours that'll count for our club. So thanks to everybody who helped.
I don't know about y'all, but it felt really good to be back there. It's like we're returning to normal little by little. So real quickly, Donnie, you want to introduce Gracie?
It's just great when a grandparent is actually asked to talk about their grandchild. So thank y'all. Thank y'all. Gracie has actually been here 2 other times, right after she went to RILA and right after she went to the youth exchange. And that time she brought her German counterpart with her. So this is her 3rd time. Does that make her like a junior member? Something like that? Yeah. She graduated from Harpeth Hall School. Now she's a junior at Centenary College of Louisiana, which is in Shreveport. Little school, great school. She's working on a double major in biology and psychology with a minor in neuroscience. She plans to be a pediatric occupational therapist. She's very, very busy, very busy in school. And I think a lot of her abilities to handle the kind of leadership position she's handling go right back to her experiences at RILA. I mean, it's an amazing opportunity. So y'all recommend people. She has just been selected to participate in the school's inaugural medical scholars program between Centenary College and Willis-Knighton. She'll be shadowing doctors and what have you. She's also a student advisor on the college's planning committee, where she's working with the provost and the board of trustees for the school. She's on the student conduct review committee. She's president of her sorority. She serves as an admissions ambassador, a psychology research assistant, which is even presented at a research conference. She's a member of 3 honor societies, on the dean's list every semester, has several part-time jobs. She's kind of busy, but she was able to come here today, and she's always anxious, not just willing, but anxious to talk to Rotary about RILA and the youth exchange. Gracie?
I'm so beyond happy to be here again. It always makes my heart so happy that I get to visit and y'all actually want to hear me talk. It's so wonderful. So I could talk about RILA for ages and ages. So catch me after, and I will keep you busy talking about RILA. But I will keep it short today. My main goal is to let you know what we do at RILA. So we don't just sit at tables and talk about what a leader is. We do a bunch of activities. So we actually went to a military base, and there was a ropes course and everything. So we were like stories in the sky, learning about leadership. So our group went up there. At the time, I was actually going through an illness of mine. And so I got really sick while we were up there because we were very high up. And so my team had to help me along and make sure that, no person left behind. And so there was just all these creative ways to really experience leadership, and all the different ways that we had to think critically, things like that. We really come to agreements, even though we all come from different backgrounds, and understanding that everybody has their own life experience, taking that into account, especially when you're going to be a leader, and making sure that you're making everybody feel heard was a big part of RILA. We also did give back to the community during RILA. And so we did build bikes for the local community, which was super cool. We did have to come up with a way to make sure that we were using our time wisely. So we kind of made an assembly line type thing. And then we tried to produce as many bikes as we could, and we got to meet the kids who the bikes are going to. We got to play with them and push them on their bikes and help them learn how to ride their bikes. So basically, I use my knowledge from RILA as well as my knowledge from traveling abroad to Germany every day, at school, and all my many various activities that my grandmother just kindly listed. So I use my knowledge that RILA gave me, that my exchange gave me, basically to just understand that in order to be a good leader, I have to first be a follower. I have to understand what it's like to be in the shoes of those that I'm leading in order to better lead them. RILA taught me that I have worth, my words have worth. And so that's how I'm not afraid to, talk to our president of our college or our provost when I'm advising them on what the students want to see, talk to my peers and see where our college can go in the next 5 years on the planning committee, as well as leading my sorority and understanding that I should see what the general membership has to say about what's going on so I can better lead and make sure that I'm serving them in the best possible way. So through RILA, I really learned that leadership's not all about, holding this position, but it's about you're serving those who you are leading, as well as them serving you. And it's a sort of mutualistic relationship. And it's important to really value that and value those that you're leading with, as well as who you're leading. If you guys have any questions about RILA, like I said, I will talk to you for ages about it. But also, I really encourage you, if you have grandchildren, children, please just let them know about this program. I would have never known if my grandmother wouldn't have brought it up to me. And I'll tell you, as soon as I got back in the car after my time at RILA, I told my grandmother I needed to come thank you guys for letting me go. So it's impacted my life greatly. Everybody who came there was a leader in their own way, but when we left, we learned how to be a quality leader, and that's very different than just being a leader. So really, thank you. Also, we talked about youth exchange really quick. That was life-changing. So please, if you know anybody or can just see somebody and tell them about this program, please do it, because it was truly life-changing. And I've made connections and friends that I never thought I would make as a high schooler, and now I'm in college, and I'm still just awestruck that I got to do those type of things. And now when I meet future employers and things, they often tell me that they've never seen a young woman who has so many accomplishments, and that's due to Rotary. So I'd like to think I'm like a product of Rotary, and hopefully I'll be able to come back when I'm older and be a Rotarian myself. But yeah, that's all I really have. But if you have questions, please come to me later. I'd be happy to answer them.
I know that your grandmother's proud of you, but we're very proud of you too. And I sense a future Rotarian president right there. So great job. Thank you so much. And now I'm going to get Mark Farron to come up and introduce our speaker.
All right, Gracie, that was fun. Tom Burton, does that name ring a bell? A lot of people in this club remember Tom Burton. A lot of us don't because you haven't been in the club that long. But Tom was in this club for a long time, since passed away along with his wife, Chris. But during his time here in this club, he was the 30-year executive director of the organization AGAPE. AGAPE means what? Love, unconditional love, God's love. And he didn't found it, but he was one of those guys that took AGAPE a long ways. And I had the privilege of learning about AGAPE through Tom, who went through this Rotary Club, and then eventually spent 2.5 years of my fundraising career being a part of it. And today we're going to have a speaker, Laura Troup, who I was a co-worker with me that you're going to love. And AGAPE's done some super cool things in this town. How many have experience with foster care, adoption, anything in that arena? You know, grandchildren, maybe yourself, anybody? Okay, a few of us. And then a couple through, well, 5 years ago, I think it was, she'll tell you more, the domestic violence, Morning Star Shelter, Morning Star Sanctuary was another organization that AGAPE took over and helped. So that's another umbrella you'll hear about. Laura herself is fun. She's just fun. You're fun, energetic. Why? Because first of all, she's a mom with a kid in elementary, middle school, and high school. So you got to be fun and you got to be moving. Her and her husband, Chad, live right here in Brentwood. And I've got a chance to work with them and hang out with them a little bit and just see her work ethic and her love for kids. What she's really good at because of what was ingrained in her, because she grew up in a family that fostered a sister. And she'll talk a little bit about that. But she's really good about helping other families understand the foster system and what it takes to be a foster care, and the fact that all of us can come around and be a part of it in some way. And so she's on staff since 2018, was a volunteer before then, has now been training a lot of people in that arena, and then now is in the community and the fundraising side of things. Please welcome Laura Troup.
Thank you, Mark. I am now kind of in Mark's role at AGAPE. I got connected with AGAPE through my church. I was at Otter Creek Church for many years and learned about the program, learned about what their mission and vision was, and started out there as a donor. So I was giving to AGAPE, and then my foster sister was sitting across the lunch table from her one day, and she said, "You can do this." And I said, "Do what?" And she said, "Foster." And I said, "I don't know about that." And she said, "If you have room in your house and love in your heart, you can foster." So Chad and I prayed about it for a year before we dove in, and then we started fostering through AGAPE. A few years into it, I started doing training for foster parents as a volunteer. And eventually they said, "Hey, do you want to come on staff? We could really use somebody on staff to do this training." And so I transitioned into that. Now, because of the conflict of interest to work and foster for the same agency, my husband and I transferred our license to Tennessee Baptist Children's Home. So now we do campus support for the Tennessee Baptist Children's Home as well, so that there's no conflict of interest. We can continue serving and living kiddos. So we're really passionate about that too. So I'm so glad to see so many great connections. I want to thank Rotary Club for supporting AGAPE since 1989. I think AGAPE, the Rotary gave its first donation to AGAPE in 1989. And of course, Tom Burton, past president of Rotary Club. We're just so grateful for your generosity, that you've been so generous to AGAPE over the years, 33 years. That's a long opportunity. AGAPE was founded in 1966, and it serves more than 4,000. Wow, that went really far ahead. Let's back up. There we go. Agape was founded in 1966, and we've served more than 4,000 individuals each year. In 2021, Agape served 142 children through foster care and adoption. We provided emergency domestic violence shelter to 56 children. We provided over 1,000 counseling sessions to more than 250 kids. That's a lot of impact because of the contributions that you have made. It is not wanting to communicate. There we go. So the impact is a ripple effect. In Williamson County, there are more than 100 kids in foster care. Yet there are fewer than 50 DCS foster homes in this county. So families of affluence are just as likely to experience trauma, which can cause fractures in family relationships and the foundations that they're built on. So the state relies really heavily on organizations like Agape and Tennessee Baptist and Monroe Harding and Youth Villages, all these organizations to come alongside and provide foster homes. So Agape currently has 14 homes in Williamson County, and it's our quickest growing area. There are 12 Williamson County churches that are supporting those family members that are members at those congregations. And then many other Williamson County churches are also pouring in with additional resources. The foster care system impacts our society more than you can imagine. 50% of our homeless population was once in foster care. More than 60% of girls and women who were rescued from sex trafficking raids have been in foster care. And 75% of the population of people incarcerated have been in foster care. That's a huge impact. How did we get there? How did we get to that point? Well, I personally think it all begins with stress. So I want to talk about stress just a little bit. Anybody experience stress? Okay, there are 3 types of stress. This is kind of the model that we go through when we talk to our foster parents about how kids in the system are impacted. There's positive stress. We all know what good positive stress, going to school, taking a test, meeting a new person, exercising stresses our muscles, but it's good for us. Then there's tolerable stress. That might be a single incident, an injury or an illness, a weather event, losing a loved one. And then there's toxic stress, which we call trauma, which is repeated exposure to abuse and neglect and household dysfunction. Kids are more sensitive to stress activity because their brain is still developing. Stress can impact their immune system. It can impact their hormones and even the way that their DNA is read and transcribed. It's fascinating. Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris is the first Surgeon General in California. She learned about a Kaiser Permanente study on how childhood trauma can affect future outcomes in health. So her work with this study has really impacted the foster care system and what we have learned about foster care and the impact on children. So there are 10 categories of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences: physical abuse, physical neglect, emotional abuse, emotional neglect, and sexual abuse. And then household dysfunction, which is a parent with a mental illness, divorce or parent never married, incarceration, substance abuse, and mother treated violently. A higher ACE score affects social, emotional, and cognitive development in kids. So 1 in 6 adults has 4 or more ACEs. 5 of the top 10 leading causes of death are associated with ACEs. There's a dose-response relationship between ACEs and health outcomes. The higher the ACE score, the worse the health outcome. A score of 4 or more, the risk of COPD was 2.5 times that of someone with an ACE score of 0. Hepatitis was 2.5 times. Depression, 4.5 times. Suicidality, 12 times. A person with an ACE score of 7 or more had triple the lifetime risk of lung cancer and 3.5 times the risk of ischemic heart disease, which is the #1 killer in the United States. So some people say, okay, so you had a rough childhood, you're more likely to drink and smoke and do all these things that can ruin your health. But this is exactly where the science comes in. We now understand how exposure to early childhood experiences affect the developing brains and bodies of kids. It affects the decision-making part of the brain, impulse control and executive function, and even their learning ability. So even if you have no bad behaviors, if you've been exposed to adversity, you are just as likely to develop those health outcomes because it affects the fight or flight response system. You know what that is? You see a bear in the woods, your hypothalamus sends a message to your pituitary gland that says, "Ooh, okay, adrenal gland, release stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, let's go." Your pupils dilate, your heart rate increases, your airways open up, and you're ready to fight the bear or run from the bear, which is great if you're in the woods and there's a bear. But for our kids who experience that trauma all the time, the bear comes home every night. And they are being poisoned by those hormones that are coursing through their body. It changes their reaction time. It slows their brain response. Okay, I'm going to do a quick exercise that I use when I'm teaching foster parents about trauma's impact on the brain. Hold your hand up. Okay, Dr. Dan Siegel does an exercise with the hand model of the brain. Tuck your thumb in and fold your fingers over. So this is a model of what your brain looks like. The wrist represents the brainstem, which is the lower primitive controls, autonomic function like breathing and digestion, and it's responsible for survival. It sends messages up to the middle. So the middle part, the limbic area, it's the amygdala and the hippocampus. This is the emotion and fear center. And it prepares us for fight, flight, and freeze when we get a danger message. So this area releases cortisol and sends us into action. So the top part, fold your fingers over, the cortex is the high thinking part of the brain. It's the front part right here behind the forehead. And that's responsible for problem solving and logic and emotional control. This is developing well into our 20s, okay? So you can put your hands down. When we experience stress and danger, we flip our lid. It helps us move into action. Our brain was created to move us into action. So, but if kids are always in danger or never certain when their needs are going to be met, then those hormones become poison to their bodies. And so they get stuck in that fight or flight mode. That's why behaviors are really unpredictable in some kids that we serve. What they need is caring adults who can help them learn to regulate and consistently meet their needs. So as parents, we meet the needs of our kids all day long. The infant needs cycle, we probably experienced it really well. If a baby has a need, they're wet or they're hungry or they're tired, they express that need by crying, right? So the caregiver meets the need by changing or feeding or rocking that baby, and the baby calms down until another need arises. And the cycle is repeated over and over and over so that trust is built. But if the needs are not met, then the opposite occurs, and that infant is stuck in a neglect cycle. So when a kiddo comes to us at 10, 12, 14, and their needs have not been met, I can't put them in my arms and bounce them in. Oh, sweet baby, I connect. That would be really awkward for me to do that with a 14-year-old, right? But we still have to meet needs over and over and over again and make connections, emotional connections, so that they can grow and so we can teach their brain to stay regulated. Of course, that means we have to stay regulated too, right? If my kid's lid is flipped and I flip my lid, I'm not going to do a very good job of helping them get under control. So I got to get myself under control and then help my kiddo get under control. In the world of foster care, Agape is working to meet the needs of children. And we don't do that just with foster parents. We do that with wraparound from churches. We do that from community members, with our neighbors, with donors. It is not the government's job to raise these kiddos. It's ours. It's mine and it's yours. So this the education is a tiny piece of what we're trying to get out into the community for others to know how to love and care for kids from hard places so that we can support as a network, as a community, and help our society to thrive. If we can help one child, we make a ripple effect in our society to improve. So I want to thank you for the ways that Brentwood Rotary Club has impacted Agape. You've supported us so well, especially lately. We've had some amazing gifts from each of you. And we want you to keep telling our message to others because we want to be able to continue this really hard, but really beautiful work. Okay. All right. That's all I have today. I just want to say thank you so much for letting me be here. And if you have any questions, I would love to answer them.
What are by the way, excellent presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What are the steps that a family would go through to qualify as a foster home?
Okay, so in the state of Tennessee, you have to be a resident for, if you want to take the ACEs study, by the way, you can scan that. You want to know how many ACEs you have. In the state of Tennessee, you have to be a resident for at least 6 months. You can be married. You don't have to be married. You have to have the space, the capacity. You have to be able to meet your own financial needs. But in order to foster, you need to do your research. Decide what's going to be a good fit. Agape may not be the best fit for everybody, and I'm okay with that. There's plenty of work to go around, right? DCS needs Christian foster homes, but there are lots of other agencies that also do that. The requirements are the same. Agape requires a statement of faith to make sure that your ideals align with ours so that we can serve each other well. But you'll go through a training process. The model is called Tennessee Key, which is an acronym for Knowledge Empowers You. And it is a very trauma-focused model of understanding of the system, of child development, of brain development, and trauma. And discipline, healthy discipline. You know, in the church even, there's been a lot of punitive punishment. And honestly, that just doesn't work with kids who've experienced abuse and neglect. But it's a training process and a home study, which is not just a home safety check, but an understanding of your family dynamics, what your capacity is to be able to love and serve kids from hard places. But that's a great question.
What's being done to solve the problem of kids aging out at 18 and not having a place to go?
At Agape specifically, we try really not to let kids age out. There are some children who, in this past year, we had a kiddo age out and the foster family said, you can stay. You're welcome to stay. He didn't want to be adopted. Even though his family had been abusive, they had moved away and he still had a cultural identity tied to that. We've had families who have adopted children after they've turned 18, but we don't want kids going through the system and leaving without some sort of permanency. We want them to have a family connection. I know that Church of the City in Franklin is about to launch a huge undertaking and create some specific programming on their campus with job education, with housing support. Housing is a huge problem in our area. Okay, even if you're financially stable, it's a huge problem. So if you're aging out without resources, there is extension of foster care through the state, but that can only get you so far because you've got so many expectations to meet in order to qualify for that support. But specifically at Agape, we do that by providing counseling support and then additional services. We don't really want to lose connections with our kids if they're not being adopted before aging out. That's a great question, though. Thank you.
And speak to those of us who can help, but we're not called necessarily to be foster family.
Well, we're all called to foster care, but not necessarily foster parenting, right? I mean, more times than thou shalt not kill in scripture, it's serve orphans and widows, right? So we all have to find our place. And somebody in this room may be feeling the nudge of the Spirit right now going, maybe I'm supposed to foster. I'm just trying to plant seeds. Okay. I'm not forcing anybody into anything, but I want you to look at your capacity, emotionally, physically, in order to foster. Some of you may be great foster parents. If you're not, I want you to find a foster parent, meet a foster parent, get to know a foster parent that you can pour into, that you can support. Maybe it's bringing meals, maybe it's helping with transportation, maybe it's babysitting, maybe it's providing gift cards for food or clothes, meeting those physical needs. But then for some of you, it may be that you're able to write a check that funds the counseling for kiddos in care. It may be, every single one of us in this room could empty our wallets and be fine. Like, we probably don't feel that big nudge, right? You're not going to miss what's in your wallet. But our kiddos sometimes are getting by with nothing. Their bio parents are getting by with nothing. So a heart of generosity is probably one way. And it doesn't have to be with agape. I'm telling you, we just need to be generous in general, and remember what we have in comparison to others. But pouring out of your time and of yourself, that's what we're called to do. Just finding your place in it.
Speak to also the goal of reunification.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
how that happens. And then also don't forget to talk about what's going to happen a week from tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. So, the number one goal for children exiting care is reunification with biological family. That's what's best for them. We want the family unit to be saved and stabilized. So 52 to 56% of kids are going to go home to a parent or a family member. For those that don't, we want to look at adoption options, and see how we can pour in. So foster parents, we need foster parents who are willing to consider adoption. We also need foster parents who are willing to work toward reunification, because strengthening that family unit is what's best for that kiddo. As far as next Saturday is our foster family event. The month of May is Foster Care Awareness Month and Mental Health Awareness Month, by the way. So we are celebrating our foster families and children by an event that you all are sponsoring, which thank you so much. And it's going to be, since the Granny White Playground isn't done yet, we're going to be at Holy Family on during the middle of the day on next Saturday. So we're getting to love on those kids and families and celebrate them and let them have a great time together. Thanks, Mark. Yes, sir.
So did you say those incarcerated, 70% come out of foster care?
75% have
75.
experienced some.
And so we've got 7,000 kids today in foster care in the state of Tennessee, with on average 1,000 aging out.
We have almost
Well,
9,000 in care in Tennessee right now. 8,990 was the last number I saw.
So, but we have about 1,000 a year that age out.
Uh-huh.
And if 75% or 750 of those 1,000 end up in our prisons,
It's a prison pipeline.
we've got a huge problem. So I
Yes, we
see.
do.
And then I know the state of Tennessee has not done a study of how many homes an 18-year-old has been in. I know Texas and Georgia has. And on average, a child, when they age out, have been in 14 to 16 foster care families by the time they turn 18 years old. The one problem I see when we get them to 18 is, what are we doing to get them to 18? If they're not going to college, are we teaching them a trade?
Mhm.
What are we doing? Because when they age out and they have no support, they're in prison. There's not much other choice. They end up, a girl gets sex trafficked, guy does whatever, but we've got to, and that's where I want to inspire Rotary, because we're business owners and community leaders.
Absolutely.
There is something Rotary can do on workforce development to keep this from being a circular rinse repeat problem.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. This guy right here, his name is Andre. He was adopted a few days ago by a family, an agape family that has 2 other foster kids in the home already. Andre was adopted before. And because of his behaviors, because of potentially their lack of training and understanding of trauma and brain development, they gave up on him. And he ended up back in the system and had that many more placements until this family said, We will love him and we will pour into him. He had some rough behaviors in their home and they kept saying, hey, I don't know why you feel like you need to do this. We are not going anywhere. You don't have to keep pushing. Andre is 16 years old, but has the educational capacity of elementary school. He will not go to college. He knows he will not go to college. But this foster dad is pouring into him, helping connect him with people who know trades that can teach him a skill and set him up for success later. The anticipation or the expectation that our kiddos have to go to college is not realistic, especially for kids whose brains are so impacted by the trauma that they don't have the capacity or skills to be able to do that. Some of them do. Some of them do well, and we can reverse some of the damage that has happened, but some of them, like him, don't. And so we have to have families who understand trauma, who are going to be patient with the behaviors and understand the behaviors are an expression of a need. The kids who need love the most, they express it in the most unlovable ways, So we need committed and caring and understanding foster parents who can pour in and love and care for these kids to get them to this place where they are thriving and are going to be set up for future success and stability.
Hi, thank you for being here and for taking the time to come and share with us. I just wanted to kind of follow up. You had mentioned finding a foster family and supporting and loving them that way. Is there anything outside of that, like a big brother, big sister program, or anything that you find other ways or avenues for us to come alongside?
In some ways, yes. Okay, so because of the confidentiality of foster care program, it's very difficult for us to say, okay, volunteers come in, we'll match you with somebody. We have to be really careful around that because again, their story is their story, not ours to tell. And so, yes, there are ways that you can pour in, but we try to look into your sphere of influence and places that you would already be. So your church probably has a foster family. There's probably someone in your neighborhood who is a foster family. And that is the ground zero spot for you to pour in and connect and mentor. This foster dad of this kiddo, the foster parents have connected him with other men in their congregation who can pour into him. Because cultural identity is important too. Foster dad is African-American, but he wants other African-American men to be able to pour into his kiddo.
Thank you.
You haven't mentioned anything about.
Oh, yeah.
domestic violence, like this card, everybody get one of these cards, stick in your pocket, because it's got a 800 number on there. It's a place you can always have and reference people if you hear about any DR, domestic violence, and just the stats. A great little card.
People leave their abusers after multiple attempts to leave their abusers. So we acquired domestic violence, Morning Star Sanctuary Domestic Violence Shelter in Madison in 2018. And it's one of only 2 in Davidson County. And we write all the orders of protection in Davidson County. So many people experience domestic violence. Someone in this room, multiple people in this room have experienced domestic violence. And it's hard to talk about and it's secretive, but we've got to bring it to light and we got to continue to pour in and love women and children and even men who are escaping domestic violence. Thanks so much for having me. You guys are amazing. We're so grateful for all you do for the community.
Laura, we have a gift for you, and it's good to see you again, by the way. I'm so glad you came back and were able to talk with us from the podium. It's a book that we read to first graders, and we want you to sign that so that we can tell them a little bit about what you do before we tell them about Rotary in the book. So I will get that out of the closet. I don't have it with me, but we welcome you to work with us anytime with AGAPE. We love AGAPE. Committee chairs, don't forget to get your reports in to Drew. Speaking of Friday the 13th, we'll talk about luck. Here's my final quote for you guys. Remember that sometimes what you want, when you don't get it, it's even a stroke of good luck for you. So on this day of bad luck, look for something good to have happened at some point. And any other announcements for the good of Rotary at this point? Don't forget to put up the tables and chairs. And if there's nothing else for the good of Rotary, those who are working with food distribution, we'll see you tomorrow morning at 5:15. And if not, we'll see you next week. Thank you. We're adjourned.